Hey, thanks for joining me here today for another episode of Road to Open. I'm Dan Pronchko with My Pocket Marketing. I'm really excited for today's conversation with someone who's been a friend of mine for about a decade now. Granted, we travel in the same circles. We've worked together. I'll tell you more about him in a second. But real quick, Road to Open, conversations with leaders, business owners, and great people doing amazing work, and having conversations about how the pandemic has impacted their business, how they are reopening their businesses and addressing the challenges that we have today. If you would like to know about future episodes, we'd love to have you join us down the line. Please visit mypocketmarketing.com/join, and we will notify you when our next episodes are scheduled, and even let you know about replays. So please head on over mypocketmarketing.com/join. So let's talk about our guest today. Events have been impacted by the pandemic in a major way. And Eugene Loj is the world-renowned expert on advanced ticket sales, the author of 2 books, The Ultimate Airshow Marketing Machine and The Ultimate Facebook Marketing Machine. In addition to the books, he's written over 650 short articles on event promotion and marketing, and presented his proven ticket selling strategies to hundreds of event producers and organizers across North America and Europe. And over the last 20 years, he's developed a one-of-a-kind marketing system that helps event organizers eliminate advertising waste while uncovering massive revenue opportunities. So by leveraging the system, his clients have sold out their events and generated up to $1.1 million in advanced ticket sales to an outdoor event with a 7-day of rain in the forecast, which is crazy because if rain's in the forecast, usually ticket sales go down. But Eugene also spends a daily dose of event promotion advice to over 500 event organizers spanning 60 different countries. And I know he'll tell you about how you can get those daily doses of tips and insights from him. But without further ado, let me introduce Eugene Loj. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for the great intro, Dan. I appreciate that.
Sure thing. That's as scripted as this is going to get, okay? Just for everybody watching and so that Eugene knows, we have so many phone calls and the banter is amazing and we really want to share it with you. So it's about as scripted as we're going to get here today. But let me kick off with a quick question, Eugene. The world is in a pandemic, and I just saw today news Coachella has actually just canceled. What are you seeing happening right now in the event space?
So, as most people who are listening can probably assume, that the event space has essentially been devastated because depending on what country you're in, the restrictions that you're seeing both at the local and national level, essentially people can't have live events anymore. I know here the limit is something like 10 people in our local area here, our local municipality. So to do larger events, you really, to have a successful event, especially an in-person event, for most people requires more than 10 people. And it's basically put the entire event industry on freeze.
So what are you're working with your clients? I mean, we hear about this, I just presented the system, that you have going on. How are you seeing event organizers address this issue right now? I mean, like I just said, Coachella canceled. I know I came across a few other articles about air shows and beer festivals just canceling. Is that what you're seeing is happening, or are you seeing others taking a step back and waiting to see what happens? And just a bit about that.
So Dan, you bring up a really great point, because depending on the time frame that you're looking at for an event, there are clients that don't have events until 2021. So they're kind of in a monitoring phase. And then obviously most of the clients that are in the 2020 calendar and clients that unfortunately had to have canceled their events, it's a little bit different depending on where you are. So if I was to break it down quickly, people that had to cancel their events, obviously they had to let their people know, they had to allocate advertising, marketing to that. If they had an internal customer list, they had to let people know. If they were selling tickets, they had to make a decision as to whether they're going to refund the tickets. And then you have the next group of people that don't have events until, let's say, the fall time. So they're closely monitoring, they're keeping people informed. And then the people who are in 21. The one universal that I think any event organizer can take away from that is take a proactive approach to your communication. Reach out to people, use multiple modalities. If you have your social, if you have an email list, if you have a website, if you have another way to contact previous customers, people who have already purchased tickets, I really think the most important thing that people can do is let their fans, their followers, their ticket holders know exactly what's going on. If you don't know what's going on, let them know what the next step is going to be, or you're going to let them know what additional information you might have to share.
So we are a few months away from when some of these fall events are going to take place. And some of the questions that hit my mind are, what should I do? There are many organizers that are in a holding pattern because either they see the states opening up, like you said, in the holding pattern. So they're seeing states open up. So maybe it's hope. I don't know. Maybe it's realistic. But how should they evaluate whether to keep their event or not?
So first and foremost, and I think for all of our clients, and I really see this, and it's heartening to see this, right? The public safety, the safety of your event attendees, I almost think it's a given that for every event organizer is the number one priority. So it's something where people are going through, and we're gonna have an event. We have clients that are first and foremost the safety of attendees and even the public, making sure if you have an event, right, that you're as safe as possible. Depending on what country you're in or what state or what province, it's a little bit different. But really the most important thing that any event organizer can do is that proactive communication. Don't let people, basically a tidal wave of people get on Facebook or get on Twitter and say, what's going on with this event? You want to stay ahead. And the last place that any event organizer wants their fans, their followers, their patrons to find out about their event is in the press. Should never find out that an event is canceled in the press, especially if somebody is a ticket holder that's invested their hard-earned money to buy a ticket to your event. So make sure proactive communication. If you only do that, I think you're going to be in a better place than most.
Why is that? What do you think it is about hearing it in the press versus getting that announcement directly? What's the difference there?
So when there's a lot going on in the news, depending on what country you're in, stateside in Canada, over in Europe, it's all going to be a little bit different. And remember, in news media, their job is to get the news, but there's typically not just one topic that's given in any given day. So is it going to be the lead story? Maybe at the local level, if it's a really big event, or it might just be a quick mention. So that is predicated on somebody actually watching that news source to get their information. And if you're the official source, if you're the event organizer, do you think that your patrons and your fans want to hear from the news or want to hear from you first?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's kind of, I purchased a ticket. Where's the customer experience? Part of the customer experience is letting people know what's going on, even if you don't know what's going on.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, that's what went through my head as you were saying that, the customer experience of what makes me feel like a valued customer or client in the situation, and like you said, hard to earn money. Here I am watching the 7 o'clock news, 10 o'clock news, and that's where I'm hearing about this is being canceled. I just spent hundreds of dollars possibly, how would that make me feel? So right on there. And like you said as well, when you're able to send out your own communications, you can add in those extra details. And what is the process going to be moving forward? Are tickets being refunded? Are we asking for donation, the ticket as a donation? Are we doing other things, which actually really dovetails into my next question. If, let's say, an event has to cancel, what's their recourse? I mean, a lot of these events have huge operating budgets. We talk about this all the time. They've got big names coming, big operating budgets. Already having sold a ton of advanced tickets puts them in a really interesting position. How do you address that?
Well, it's a very challenging position. The first place, right, I'm going to go back, and this is going to be a little bit of a broken record for our conversation today, is communicating first, especially the people who are ticket holders, get to them first. But the other part of that is sit down with your team, sit down with your organization. This happens a lot in the event, I'm going to say in the air show world, where the headlining act cancels. A couple of years ago, we had a client that their headlining act canceled 38 minutes before they were supposed to go on stage, and there were over 10,000 people in the audience. So what we fortunately did is we planned some contingencies and communications, right? You want to make sure that your communications are essentially in the can. If anything that we see from this global pandemic is making sure that if you're an event organizer, if you don't have a contingency plan, which includes communications to the media, what the ticket policy is ahead of time, you don't want to be, coming in that 38-minute time frame and coming up with those policies. The other thing that's really important too, and I know especially in North America, and every country is going to be a little bit different, is just because you have a no ticket refund policy, and even if you have people go through and check that box before they check out, as an attorney once told me, and this is not legal advice, but as an attorney once told me, you can be clear as day and safe and sound on the legal side of the equation, but from a customer experience and a customer relationship perspective, I know, and fortunately, my clients have been awesome with this because they've always made sure the customer was happy, even if an event did get canceled. And sometimes that takes 3 months after an event to make sure as many people, you're not going to get 100% of the people. But the one thing I would strongly caution against is using there are no refunds. We told you that there was a no refund policy. Was it caveat emptor? Buyer beware. That is a recipe for disaster if you want to have your event anytime in the future, because people are going to get on social media. They're going to go, in some cases, to the media. In some cases, there was one place where somebody threatened a lawsuit. You're going to spend more time dealing with the PR disaster. And I understand the financial side of it. But what you need to do is you need to decide what your ticketing policy is, especially if you've sold tickets, and what can you do to make sure that your customers are happy and that you have an event that they're going to want to come back to in the future.
No, it's a really good point. One of the statistics that we learn about is people who've had negative experiences, customers, potential customers, they tell way more people than anybody who's had a great experience. I think it was like 20-0, actually. It's like if you had a negative experience, you're going to tell 20 people or throw it out onto social media so hundreds see it, give a negative review, etc. But if you have a great experience, the majority of us just think, oh, that's what's supposed to happen. So really keeping in mind that customer experience is really key. There's a really great comment that kind of just came in, and it dovetailed. It's part of this conversation, so I'm going to hit you with it, Eugene. But before I do, if anybody has any questions or other comments about event marketing or marketing in pandemic, et cetera, that you'd like to ask for our conversation, please just drop it as a comment to the video below, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. We're going to see both of them, and we'll try to get to as many as we can if it makes sense to make part of here. So this question, I'm going to throw it up here, Eugene, from Rian Waris. Losing money in refunds or ticket cancellation is irreplaceable, but do tell me about the mindset of people with regards to digital events or online events. Will this be any good revenue-wise? I don't know if this question is like, what if we took a real live event, made it digital? Or I think that's kind of the vein in which this is going.
Okay, if you want to go along and if there's any clarification that's needed, I'm happy to provide it. So if they want to type in another comment, we'll make sure they get them a good answer. So really great point. I can't have a live event. Do I transition into the digital place? And if you can do it, and there are people that have been doing it for years. I know, Dan, you and I talk about these information marketers. There are people I know that have literally gone from the live event space to being highly profitable in the online virtual space. Yeah. Now, I will tell you that I have a little bit of a bias when it comes to this. I do think that for certain types of live events, they're irreplaceable. But if you can't have more than 10 people, you really don't have a choice in the matter. And we've seen this. This actually came up. A friend of mine, Phil Pacific, who does a lot of great sponsorship work for clients in North America, shared with me a story that there was an event, I think it was in Maryland or Virginia, that they had a barbecue festival of almost 100,000 event attendees. And they did a virtual barbecue. Now, did they have 100,000 people show up to the virtual barbecue? No, but what they did is they had the people that are most passionate about their event, right? They gave them a format. They figured out a way to get people to participate. The great thing that all the technology, especially on the social side of the spectrum, is how to virtually interact with someone now. There've never been so many tools. Look at what we're doing today remotely from fairly distant points in North America. We're talking to one another, we're sharing information. And if there's a way to transition that, I think it's a great way to do it. My one probably biggest recommendation is go and look at what other events are doing. I call it event modeling. There's somebody that has figured out how to make a transition from a live event to a virtual event. And if you go to something like Google News and you type in, live event goes virtual or live event goes online, I'm sure that you'll find probably now hundreds or thousands of articles. Somebody has figured it out. Mm-hmm. And how can you ethically borrow their idea? Or it's a great idea to jump online, but going through, and how can you ethically borrow something that's been successfully implemented for your event, kind of as a Band-Aid as we get back to doing live events?
Yeah, on that note, in the marketing space, at least, there have been many events that have been digital the entire time. To my mind comes Social Marketing Examiner Conference. Social Media Examiner has their own conference, Social Media Week or something like that. That's always had a digital component. Content Marketing Institute had in the past done in-person events, and they had like this extra piece where you could see everything digitally, but this year everything's going digital. I know Dell sponsored a huge professional development conference, online only, and there was news today actually of a platform called Wave that was working with John Legend for live music events and taking concerts digitally, where they raised something like 20 or 30 million dollars to develop that out. So there are a lot of players in the space already doing fully digital events that are worth looking into. Now, part of that comment that took us down this path was about revenue being irreplaceable, and wondering what tips you have for these event organizers that are canceling their events where patrons have already bought tickets in advance. What do you do with that revenue? One part of it is, you're talking customer experience. So we understand that piece, the potential refunds, but are there other tips that you wouldn't mind sharing of how organizers can address that, especially since their operating budgets are tight? They may already be at the brink, have already paid, deposits that they can't get refunded with, performers, et cetera. Just, I'm putting a lot out there, but I know you got a lot of inside experience in this. Just wondering if there's anything else that you could share.
Yeah, there's actually a great case study from years ago, a Canadian client up in Nova Scotia. They had a hurricane run over their show site. So everything, right? You can't just imagine that. Yeah. And that was the weekend of their actual event when that hurricane came through. I think it might have been Hurricane Hannah. Don't quote me on that. So they were definitely in this mode of, oh my gosh, what do I do? All of these people purchased tickets. And they kind of communicated, I can't remember if it was a telephone call or an email, but we did end up on the phone, and they said, Eugene, I'm really panicked. I don't know what to do. So as much as focusing on the customer experience, I said to him, listen, you might have to deal with some case by case. So what's your public policy? What is it going to be? And I think at the time what they came up with was, if you purchased a ticket, the public side of the house was, we're going to offer you, right? They did have a no, quote unquote, no refund policy, right, but they knew that was going to float. And what are you going to do when a hurricane runs over your event? You can't have people out there. So what they did is they said, listen, the next, for our next event, we're going to give you 100% credit, and we're going to make sure that you're happy and you get to see the event that you paid for. Now, I can't remember the exact number, but most people in this case, and we're talking about thousands and thousands of customers, said, okay, that works for me. I appreciate it. You're willing to do it. And it's also an opportunity. You have to kind of carefully balance this, right? And everybody has to decide what's right. You can say, hey, we have a no refund policy. We understand the circumstance, and we're going to make sure that you're happy. That's another great thing to lead with, even though it says no refund. But you have to be careful because that will antagonize some people. So you want to be careful about it and really know your customer. I think he said to me there were about 59 people. So when they made the initial offer, there's something like 59 people that said, no, that's no good. I want my money back. So they then did, and we're talking about thousands of people that purchased tickets.
No, that's what I'm laughing about is like, so they offer, sure, you can have a refund, but look, if we, are looking to the next event, we're going to honor this next year. So out of thousands and thousands of people, like I'm laughing because it's like this really small percentage that actually asked for the refund, but I bet they wouldn't have even known that if they didn't even ask and put that out there. So, I mean.
So the interesting thing about that too is it's amazing how many people will never ask for a refund. And it depends on the type of event you have and, demographics, psychographics. Sure. But it's actually really interesting. As a quick aside, some of the highest refund request rates that we see for clients are on general admission tickets. So kind of your entry level ticket, the lowest level of refund request rates as a percentage of the whole, even in some cases of the total percentage of tickets sold, are on higher end tickets. But that's also because clients are amazing at making sure the customers are happy. So I talked about those 59 people. What happened with the 59 people? Well, the event organizer went out of their way to individually contact them. First, they started with email. Some of them they actually needed to talk to. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, here's an event organizer that had their event run over by a hurricane. Most of the people had purchased tickets. And I think they issued a handful of refunds, right? Where people are like, no, I can't make it back. I just want my money back. But they still made they made those customers happy. Actually, now that I think about it, I'd love to know if those people actually came back to a future event, because we're talking about making sure that your customers are happy. But if you take thousands of people, whittle it down to 59, making sure they're happy case by case, and then issuing a handful of refunds, I think you're doing great.
No, and I think what's great about that is you get to keep that revenue to seed the next event, or portions of it at least, whatever was recoverable, seed your next event. But even taking that one step further, when the next year comes, you can offer value-added upgrades for even additional revenue from those who've already purchased tickets. Like, you're already coming for free, but hey, if you'd like to upgrade, we have this extra for you as well. And so I'm just trying to think like that marketer, maybe take a little bit out of I don't know if I'm thinking like you or not, but like just that next step is like, I like it for that reason too, because when the next year comes, you're able to potentially offer value adds for waiting a whole year, or even monetary upgrades for large value there too. So that's
Dan,
really
can
cool.
I share one more great idea too?
Please do, please.
There's right around the corner, well, right down the road from you in Detroit, Michigan. There's an event there that the event organizer has really been thinking through this, very focused on their customers, which is great. But they took it to a degree that other people in that particular industry segment are like, how are they doing that? That seems like they're going to lose all that money. What they've done is their event isn't until the end of August. They said, if you've bought a ticket, or if you buy a ticket, again, they went to their customers first that already bought a ticket, we're going to give you an equal value package for 2021 and 2022.
Wow.
And people say, well, how do you do that? That seems insane. You're losing all that revenue. Well, again, it's the law, making sure your customers are happy. But the other thing that they really know, and they have their numbers down, is what a customer is worth, much like Disney. As soon as somebody comes inside the park or inside the event, how much money do they spend? There are events that they're set up as a free event. I go to a local ethnic festival. When I look at my ATM and my credit card withdrawals, it's a free event. And by the end of it, I've spent $170 in food over 4 days. And it's an amazing experience. And that you average that out. So what is the revenue worth when somebody comes into the event? And people are going and they're like, oh my gosh, look at this event. They're making sure I'm happy. They go on social. They tell their friends about it. They tell their family about it. Aren't you like, don't you want to have an event like that where people are saying they're going out of their way? And here's the big thing. They're at least break even or profitable, even with everything with the pandemic this year.
That's insane. I mean, but that really takes an organizer, a committee, leadership to really understand the value of that customer list, that database, and really being able to tie the dots together with data, which is why I have this here on the board, which actually I kind of stole from you. It's always been a mantra of mine, but you put it into words. If you can't, don't spend it if you can't track it. But the only way that you can offer tickets for 2 years in a row is exactly like you said. What is the value of that customer? And that's one thing we do with our clients too, is really understand what is their value, and then the residual down the line as well. That really helps understand the true margin, what we're able to do in extending more customer experience, actually, which leads to more word of mouth, more customers, more repeat business. So that's actually really amazing. There's a comment that came in kind of down this line of what to do with the revenue, et cetera, from Derek Arnold. And this comment is about corporate partners. So every year there are sponsors that help put the event on. I'm guessing the strategy is similar, but how have you worked with your clients, or have you heard in the space of events and event organizers managing these expectations?
So when it comes to volunteers, corporate sponsors, partners in the community, I work with a great gentleman by the name of Phil Pacific at ADC Group. And Phil does national sponsorships. His primary focus is on air shows. And like we talked at the beginning of the session here today, Dan, it's really about reaching out and communicating. In some cases, over communicating with people. You have to find that fine line between being a somebody else's cliche, a welcome guest versus a persistent pest. You always want to be on the welcome guest side of the equation, even if it's a cordial, hey, I just want to check in. I want to see how things are going and how things are doing. The same applies for your partners, volunteers, and sponsors. Even if you say, listen, we don't even know what's going on, but what we're going to do is I just want to reach out to you every couple of weeks, whatever the time frame, maybe as you approach your event or your cutoff date for your event, on a more often basis with higher frequency, just letting people know. See, the thing that's amazing, and you and I talk about this a lot in our conversations, never have we had so many ways to communicate with one another as human beings,
True.
Yet we seem so disconnected. And this is for me really personal. Clients know this. Pick up that telephone. Yes, an email is great, but follow it up with a telephone call and try them a couple times and actually leave a voicemail message and let people talk over the telephone. That's the one thing that I think people really, truly appreciate, hearing somebody else's voice, especially with what's going on and where you are in the world. But communication and proactive communication, even if you're not totally sure what's going on, that will win you way more brownie points, especially with partners and sponsors, because they will look back and say, they let us know what's going on. They had no control over the situation. And we in the future want to take our sponsorship dollars and we want to partner with people that make us feel good about where we're investing our time and money.
Yeah, that interpersonal communication, I think, is key. I know between you, me, and our other friend and colleague, Roman, there's like some rules that we've kind of had between us. If anything is longer than like 3 text messages, just pick up the phone. Obviously, we need to do something. If there's confusion in email, let's pick up the phone. But there's something real personal, and especially in this digital immediate communication environment we live in, you can PM on Facebook, Twitter, you could send an email, you can text to no end, but that personal step of that phone call honestly really means a lot. And I know that you agree with that.
Absolutely. And it's almost, again, if you lead with that giving hand, I mean, people, they just, unless it's me, because you know how difficult I am to talk with.
Horribly difficult. Oh, it's horrible.
Before we get on today, Eugene, you have to be on your best behavior. So this is, it's far different than our conversations, but it's always great with Dan. And that's the thing, is it's that positive energy, right? You have to go through, and for some people, like myself included, sometimes you have to work at it. People have come to me, they see me one way, especially clients. They're like, "You are so different to work with versus public." And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but the interpersonal communication, right? There's business, and I totally get that. But if you can just kind of genuinely reach out to another human being, I think most people, and if it's authentic and genuine, people appreciate that. They say, you know what? Wow, well, like, I have to deal with that person. They're really difficult to deal with in the workplace, but they're actually a halfway decent human being. And I would go and have a beer, or I'd have a wine, or I'd have a drink with them, and that's a great person.
Cool. I want to take a moment and look forward. We've talked a lot about this of, okay, events are canceled. We know what our plan is. We understand all this. We've done the post-mortem. We've put contingency plans in place. That was a topic I'd love to talk about today. Don't know if we're going to have time. Maybe that'll be a follow-up conversation in some way about how to make contingency plans and how much to plan out. But so we're looking forward. We don't have an event till 2021. Okay. I know what your system recommends, because we're friends, we talk all the time. Those watching don't. So what is it that they need to do to set themselves up for next year? And it's not 4 months before the event. It's now. What is it that they need to do?
Yep. Great question. I actually had a conversation at the beginning of this week with a US military client, and we talked about, and there's still a ton of uncertainty. They don't know what's going on. It's that proactive one-on-one, as much as when I say one-on-one communication, Dan, I think right? Email. For everything out there, the data is very clear that email, SMS, text, and we're talking about permission-based marketing, super important, especially in Europe with GDPR.
Yeah.
But making sure that you have those people on your list that want to hear from you. I definitely recommend going to email, reaching out, writing a very personable email now, even a year in advance, even if you have to tell them, we don't even know if we're going to have our event, or we're looking forward to it. We're going to keep you in the loop. We want to let you know that we haven't forgotten about you. And we're going to do everything that we can as an organization to make sure that there's a safe, amazing event for you, and make sure that that we are working every day to make sure that your family have an extraordinary time, but at that personal level. Now, quickly, because people say, well, can I just post a Facebook post? If you just post a Facebook post, that's what everybody is doing. We're not even going to get into the boosting of Facebook posts and targeting. But
I was going to say, I was just going to add in there, like, I agree. Facebook posts, you're competing with the algorithm. I mean, even if they follow you and ask for notifications, it's still less than 2%. I think now it's less than 1% of the fans of your Facebook page are even going to see that post. So, I mean, as a communication method, it's pretty much zero effective in that front. And so what I'm hearing is all of these opt-in methods are super key. So making sure that every customer and potential customer, as quickly as you can, get them on your email list, get them in your SMS platform, because that gives you that one-to-one connection and direct the ability to directly deliver your message.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that clients have asked this, well, we don't have anything, or we're not sure if we're going to have an event, so what can we communicate? I mean, just go to YouTube. And internally, right, there's these great videos, whether it's a beer festival, a whiskey festival, an air show, an ethnic festival, right? The 10 best Greek dishes that you can make at home in under 15 minutes. Have it topically relevant, but with the, hundreds of millions or tens of millions of videos that there are just on YouTube, embed that, bring them back to your website. Say, hey, listen, what do you think of this? This is kind of crazy, right? Don't do it like if you send it every day. And being a person that sends emails every day, you have to be careful. But if you're an event organizer, heck, you could send every couple of weeks, send something interesting. And here's the important part, and it's really key: something that the public, right? You might want to sometimes test this with family and friends, and not to give you an answer, oh, that's the greatest thing in the world. Go to your friends that are brutally honest with you. Dan and I talk about this a lot. And
you should hear
you
our
share
phone
something.
calls.
Yeah, and you should. And Dan calls me up and he's like, "You're really not sending that email, are you? You're not going to do that, right?" So that's kind of where friends who are brutally honest with you in a loving, caring way can be very helpful. We have a mutual friend of ours, Roman, who tends to be a great candidate for that. But the reason I bring it up is if you find something they're like, this is great, or I've never seen this before, sometimes even internally within our own event niches, we fall prey to, oh, I know that, or I take that for granted, or that's not, I've heard that story a million times. But maybe there are people in the public, people who are previous customers that have never heard it. And you have an opportunity to brighten somebody's day, right? Something positive, something inspiring, something that makes people laugh. And it's funny because some of the best email responses that we've gotten on these massive email lists for clients of like up to 65,000 people is personal stories that people are sharing with one another. And people write back, they're like, oh my gosh, that brightened my day, or I laughed so hard. Thank you so much for doing that.
So two things right at the end there really stuck out to me. One is having that advisory council. Maybe it's not an official one, but like you said, those friends or those colleagues that you know are going to be brutally honest with you. But like you said, in a loving way, not maliciously. But two, and I don't know if anybody picked up on it, but emails daily, I think is what you said. Now, I'm not going to go into that and ask how you do that, but like you said, it's with care, segmentation, etc. But it's possible. It is something that I always get pushback from my clients too, when we get to points where it's daily emails for whatever's going on, but it works. It's possible. There's ways to do it responsibly, but you can only do it if you have those lists, and if you know those lists, they're cleaned and opted in. Because if you don't do those, that technical stuff up front, it fails. So I will just kind of say that at the end there. I think you'll echo a lot of that. But real quickly, now we're running out of time. So where, because we've only scheduled this for really the next 7 minutes. So if those watching want to get in touch with you and or learn more about you and your event profit system, how do they get in touch?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. If you go to eugeneloj.com, that's EUGENELOJ.com. Dan, I don't know if you can send that out over the chat side of the house. So Dan had mentioned the 650 plus articles. You'll find them there. They're short posts, they're categorized. But what I encourage everybody to do, if you're really passionate about events, is get on the daily email list. Yes, I do send a daily email. Yes, I do ask people to purchase something. But the one promise I make everybody is that you will be left in a better place when you get the information. And here's the big key, Dan. If you're sending an email, obviously you have to be, it has to be palatable to the people getting it. So that's kind of up to the person writing the email. With that said, what I always promise people is if you implement what's in my email, you don't have to buy a single thing from me and you will see results from it. But if you're just on an email list and you never read through the email, and you don't have to read every email, and I'm not just talking about myself, because it is sometimes a struggle to how do I deliver value every single day. The other thing that I'm going to throw in too is if anybody signs up today, obviously you'll get the email that comes out tomorrow. Today's already went. But what I can do is a couple of months ago recorded a event cancellation and survival guide webinar for the people on my list. We did a couple live presentations. I have the recording of that. If you sign up on the email list today, I will make sure, if you do it today, to get you that recording today before tomorrow's email. You are going to have to go through and double opt in and hit the little express check button. To Dan's point, I only want people on the email list that want to be there. I'm not advocating at all stuffing email lists. But if you do that kind of as a value add to everybody on the call today, because there is that great question, we get into a little bit more of the detail of how to communicate. And that comes from somebody in ticketing that's ticketed over 2,500 events. And then, as I said, sponsorship, Phil Pacific, some great points. I go through and I expand on those points. So eugeneloj.com, sign up for the daily emails.
Cool. I put that link down in the comments. I can also attest to the value of those emails. I've been subscribed for years. And I can tell you that I do implement a lot of what Eugene recommends for my clients that do events, and they've seen growth year over year, event over event. So a lot of great stuff, and it's very generous to offer the webinar recording of to those watching the video today. I got to make it to 40 minutes to figure that one out, though. So that's huge.
So actually, Dan, can I hijack this a little bit?
Do it. Go for it.
Because you were talking about some of the things
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, I need you for this because there's something you pointed it out on your on the dry erase board behind you. So we talked about the proactive stuff. Mm-hmm. That little phrase, and Dan, I don't know if everybody can read it. Would you mind reading that? Because that actually is kind of, Dan is coming into the home stretch. You know, people are asking, Dan and I have talked about it. If you cannot track the effectiveness of what you're doing, don't do it. Now, that phrase and what Dan has up on his board, and Dan, I'll let you talk to that, has never become so important. We have limited sponsorship, sometimes no sponsorship dollars, little to no advertising budget. And it's not just dollars and your hard-earned dollars, but it's time. So Dan, I'm going to kind of let you expand on that because that's the other really big takeaway is getting back to that direct response. And I'm going to kind of throw it back to you.
Yeah, this is don't spend it if you can't track it. Really, one thing that I've been working for the last really about decade is getting really good at measuring the entire marketing sales funnel of understanding the impact of every dollar spent. And I know, Loj, you're a real big advocate of direct response marketing. But one of the tenets of whether it's that or any kind of marketing is that marketing is a tool. You know, it is something that is meant to generate revenue, generate profit. And if it doesn't, then that means somewhere along the line, you stop thinking about this and looking at it as an investment. It is not a cost. So many clients, when we first start working together, look at it as a cost. And as we're able to track and prove that doing the fundamentals that so many put on the wayside for the next shiny thing, but you put those fundamentals in place, as Eugene had shared today, the opt-ins, the emails, the text messaging, but opt-in, you know, building that audience, that platform for your business basically becomes a spigot. You can turn it on and off at any time, but that can only happen if you do this. And so really, really valuable. Thank you for giving me the chance to do that, Eugene, on the day with you. So that's about all the time we have. Really, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been great. Hopefully everybody got good value out of it. I appreciate, Dan, you asking me to participate today, being able to share some of the stories. And like I said, definitely go through, if you get a chance, sign up to the email. To Dan's point on tracking, I can't help myself. I'll even include a book called Scientific Advertising, the PDF version of it. It's fallen out of copyright, so I can send that with the video that anybody, it will teach you really the fundamentals of direct response and really bring home what Dan has up on the board. So Dan, thank you very much. This has been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and hopefully get a chance to do it again in the future.
Awesome. Looking forward to having you back soon. So that ends today's conversation on Road to Open with Eugene Loj. When you have a moment, immediately, actually, hopefully, head over to eugeneloj.com and get on that list for those daily tips and insights. Beyond that, we'd love to have you join us on the next conversation. You may have heard me and Eugene talk about a friend of ours, Roman. He'll be joining me next week. He's a management consultant that works with companies across the entire country to help them find new revenue streams and improve operations, et cetera. It's going to be a really insightful conversation. And if you'd like to get notified about that one, please visit mypocketmarketing.com/join. Or if you leave a comment like, I want to get on the list, I'll PM you and we can get you on there so you get that next invite. But we'd love to have you here next week. I'm Dan. Thank you for joining me today for Road to Open with Eugene Loj, and I will see you next week.